to Tom's World Scale Model Series. In today's episode, we undertake the building of our 1/35th scale Takom Stug 3. If you enjoy programming on scale modeling, then show your support by subscribing to this channel. Leave us a comment, like, dislike, or share the video with friends. Clicking the notification bell gives you alerts when we post new content. Or visit the channel Tom's World for a friendly visit for a complete list of all our videos. In our unboxing video, we found a beautifully cast and detailed kit complete with photo etch pieces, braided copper wire, Lincoln length tracks, slide molded parts, and clear instructions. Based on the box's contents, our expectations were high for a worry-free and fun build. So stick with us as we transform a pile of plastic parts into an impressive scale representation of the vehicle that terrorized Allied tank crews throughout World War II. I had built Takom's M3 a few years ago. The model was fun to build and looked great once assembled. I was therefore looking forward to building another Takom kit, and this most recent Stug release seemed like a good candidate for our series. As we saw in our unboxing episode, there are many quality Stug models to choose from. But with the release of Takom's new line of World War II combat vehicles, the company is quickly establishing a reputation for quality and competitive pricing. But loath to assume anything here at Tom's World, for us, the ultimate test is always in the build, and I wondered whether the Stug will compare favorably to the M3 kit. As we start to work with the plastic, we can't help but appreciate the crispness of the casting and superb level of detail. For example, on the road wheels, in addition to the tiny continental raised lettering, if we look closely, the casting even captures the tiny weld beads that attach the hub to the rim. I also really appreciated the tapering sprue gates on the smaller and more delicate parts. This makes cleaning up these delicate pieces just a little bit easier. Our build-up begins with steps 1 and 2, which detail the swing arm, final drive, and stabilizing shock absorber installation. The swing arms and lack of any leaf or volute springs are dead giveaways that our Stug is torsion bar suspension. If we look at the hull floor interior, we can see how the mountings for the swing arms are offset. This is to make room for the torsion bars, which run side by side. Although the torsion bars are not included in the kit, they would normally be installed like this. And here's another illustration of the Panzer III torsion bar suspension layout. And here are the parts we'll need for steps 1 and 2, all cleaned up and ready for attaching to the hull. Almost immediately we run into tiny parts, which we'll find many more of throughout the build. Note the tiny size of these little doodads compared to a number 11 X-Acto blade. To help us align the swing arms, Takom has molded keyways into the mounting holes, and each swing arm has little corresponding keys molded onto them. These alignment aids ensure our swing arms are pointing in the right direction when we install them. It also ensures that our road wheels, once attached, will all contact the ground so our model doesn't rock. We can see that the Stug 3 has trailing swing arms since they point in the direction of the rear of the vehicle at around the 4 o'clock position. I couldn't resist including a couple of close-up shots to highlight the beautifully detailed parts. Step 3 has us attach the running wheels, drive sprocket, idler wheels, and towing brackets. While there aren't as many wheels as say a Panther or Tiger, there are still enough to keep the builder busy. A total of 44 pieces make up the road wheels. All plastic injection molded parts have mold parting lines, and armor modelers are all too familiar with the raised lines that run along the circumference of most tank model wheels. But it's interesting to note that the rubber liners found on most real tank wheels are molded using the same two-part mold process that's incorporated in plastic injection molded parts. This photo depicts a couple of spare wheels that are mounted on a real Panzer III's fender. They're likely factory fresh since the mold parting lines can clearly be seen. So technically, if you're depicting a tank that's fresh off the factory line, you could actually leave these parting lines on. But as the tank is driven, the molded parting lines on the wheels eventually wear off, as can be seen in this this image. The enormous battering and damage the rubber parts take after being driven on is very apparent. However, if we look closely at the return rollers, we can still see very faint mold parting lines. Since we'll be depicting a battle-worn Stug 3, unfortunately, we must sand down the parting lines on our wheels. It's a good idea to dress the wheels, since if we enter a model in a contest, uninformed judges may mistake the parting lines for sloppy building. Each of the road wheels builds up with two parts, and their spacing is accomplished by these posts and pads. If we look closely, we can see that many of the posts have flash on their ends. These should be cleaned up so the posts rest flush on their mounting pads. A light sanding does a good job of removing the flash. We must be careful to remove just the flash. If we sand too much, we may inadvertently shorten the posts, then the two halves may not fit together tightly. We can then assemble the drive sprockets, idler wheels, and return rollers. We'll set the roll wheels aside for now so we can paint them prior to assembly. So far the model is looking fantastic, and these shots again illustrate the amazing level of detail found in this kit. Moving on to steps 4 and 5, we can now attach our mufflers, exhaust bulkhead, and screen and other sundries. The muffler exhaust pipes are partially hollowed out, but I found the hole to be a bit shallow. We can improve the look of the exhaust pipes by drilling them further with a pin vise. The pipes are barely visible on the finished model, but we want to be thorough and conscientious in our building. We encounter our first photo etch part in step 5. This is the grille cover for the exhaust bulkhead. The photo etch in the kit is also beautifully detailed, and I really appreciate the very slender sprue gates, which simplifies removing the parts from the tree. The photo etch is quite thin and gauged, so handle these parts carefully. We can cut the parts from the tree with sharp scissors, but here I'm using a box cutter. I placed the tree on a small glass cutting board so I don't distort or bend the parts when I put pressure on the knife. The photo etch tree has plastic film on both sides to protect the parts from scratches and scuffs. Leave this film on as you cut the pieces so they don't go flying off onto the floor. Once the part is cut off, we can peel back the film and gently remove the part from the tree. We're left with a little gate remnant on the part. We can cut this remnant off with a sharp pair of scissors, but sanding sticks also work well. Here I'm using a diamond file. This is the diamond file I use. It's a Tamiya half round number 400. Its tapering blade is ideal for plastic model building, and it works great for dressing photo etch parts. The exhaust bulkhead is built up using 5 parts. We want to make sure the brackets are perpendicular to the end piece. There are tabs and slots on the part which help to get the piece properly positioned. I was a little concerned with this build-up, but the parts did fall together surprisingly well. If we look closely, we can see this delicate rabbet joint where the side of the hull meets the rear bulkhead wall. This is a great example of the amazing engineering and part fit that's found in this kit. And here's the look so far. Steps 6 and 7 call for building up the tracks and attaching the deck. Since I prefer to paint and weather the lower hull, wheels, and tracks prior to assembly, we'll set the tracks aside for now. We'll also hold off on attaching the deck to the hull. That'll make it easier to work on the lower parts of the vehicle. Steps 8 and 10 is where we detail the fenders and deck. About 70 styrene and 11 PE parts get attached, so be prepared for a bit of a time investment for cleanup. There's one issue with the instructions. Note how parts M35 and M58 are depicted as getting installed over top the towing cable. This is incorrect since the cable should run over these stiffeners. The instructions do get it right on the other side. more small parts like these near microscopic lifting eyes. Also notice the tiny fender supports that get attached, and these PE tow cable holder brackets are a good test for the builder's dexterity and patience. The photo etch in the kit is quite thin. In fact, one of these riveted brackets went up in flames when I tried to anneal it with a candle. So don't anneal these parts, even if they curl when removing from the tree. I ended up replacing the bracket with a bit of thin styrene sheet with rivets made of thin cutoffs of stretched sprue. This little bent PE part is a holder for the wire cutter tool, which gets attached later. The kit comes with a length of copper braided wire to make our towing cables with. The cable loops are slide molded styrene. We attach the copper wire to the styrene loops with thin CA glue. I really like using copper wire since it's just a smaller version of real towing cable. As a result, once painted and attached, it looks very realistic. Moving along, steps 13 through 16 detail the construction of the casement and gun. A total of 35 parts make up these steps. And here are all the parts cleaned up and ready to go. Again, very nice detail on this model, like these very small and delicate lifting loops, and dig the fit. We don't see any of the gaps or seams like we encountered in our Trumpeter Grizzly and KV1 builds. Bless Takom for the attention to detail and superb part fit. Unlike other Takom kits, our Stug doesn't have any interior details, but we do get these rudimentary forms like the gun breech. The muzzle brake builds up with just 3 pieces, and it's cleverly engineered to avoid the nasty seams that are usually found on 2-part barrels. I don't much like assembling 2-part barrels, and thankfully this kit's barrel is a single slide molded piece. Once assembled, the gun looks great. Goes to show that if properly engineered, styrene barrels can look just as good as turned metal ones. If we follow the directions closely and if we're careful with our glue placement, the gun should elevate in its mount. We're getting close to finishing, and steps 18 and 19 build up the casement roof. And here are all these parts ready for assembly. As we discovered in our unboxing episode, the vision telescopes that get installed in the Commander's cupola have knockout scars. At first I thought these scars would have to be filled and sanded. In this test fit, we see that the scars are totally hidden, so to our relief, no filling is required on the telescopes. I decided to button up the Commander's hatch and dispense with the scissor telescope. I did, however, want to mount the MG34, but there's an error in the instructions. The instructions depict the machine gun shield in its upright position while the loader's hatch is closed. This is incorrect, unfortunately. As we can see in this image, the machine gun shield is actually held up by a catch that's located on the hatch door. In other words, the hatch must be open for the machine gun shield to stay in its upright position. As a result, after we paint, I'll attach the loader hatch doors in the open position. I can then place the MG shield in its upright position. I couldn't resist a quick dry fit of the sub-assemblies, and it's satisfying to see the vehicle taking on a recognizable form. So with our major sub-assemblies done and the rest of our parts cleaned up, we're ready to move to painting and weathering. Having come off of our Grizzly and KV1 Trumpeter builds, which required lots of gap filling, hole drilling, and detail scraping, this Takom kit is a welcome improvement. I really love these newer Takom kits since they require no filling, and the part fit and kit engineering is world class. And that'll do it for this part 1 of our Takom Stug 3 build project. Make sure to check back soon for the exciting conclusion in part 2, where we paint and weather our little tank buster. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel, otherwise leave a like, dislike, or feel free to grumble in the comments, or visit the channel Tom's World for a complete list of all our entertaining and educational videos. In the meantime, keep your barrels swapped and sights aligned, take care, and all the best.